Commander Park Jihan was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alarm started blaring throughout the UES Healer's Sword. He quickly put down his cup and rushed to the bridge, where red warning lights were flashing everywhere. His crew was already at their stations, looking serious and focused. "What's the situation?" Park asked, as he took his command chair. The massive view screen in front of him showed a star map with a blinking red dot in the distance. Communications Officer Kim Suman turned around with worry in her eyes. "Sir, we're getting a distress signal from the Kepler-4 Fortibee system. It's from the Valerian mining colony there. They say people are dying." Park had heard about the Valerians before. They were a peaceful alien race that mined rare crystals from distant planets. They had never caused trouble for anyone and mostly kept to themselves. "Put the message on screen," he ordered. The transmission was scratchy and filled with static, but the desperation in the alien voice was clear. The Valerian speaking looked tired and scared. His skin was pale blue and his large eyes seemed to be pleading for help. "Please, anyone who can hear this message. Our people are dying from a terrible sickness. Our doctors cannot stop it. We need medical help immediately." Dr. Lee Minji, the ship's chief medical officer, was already studying the data that came with the message. She was one of the best doctors in the Korean Space Navy, and Park trusted her completely. Her fingers moved quickly across her tablet as she read the medical reports. "This is bad, Commander," she said, shaking her head. "The plague is spreading fast. Their medical systems are completely broken down. They have thousands of sick people and no way to treat them." Kim Suman looked up from her communications panel. "Sir, they're asking for any medical ships in the area to come help them. They say they'll pay anything." Park studied the star charts on his screen. The Kepler-4 Fortibee system was 3 days away if they pushed their engines to maximum speed. That was a long journey, but these people needed help. He thought about all the sick aliens suffering on that distant world. "How many people live in that colony?" he asked. "About 50,000, Dr. Lee replied. "But the plague is spreading to new people every hour. If we don't help them soon, most of them will die." Park made his decision quickly. "Set course for Kepler-4 Fortibee. Maximum burn. All medical teams to readiness condition 1. The crew began working immediately. The ship's engines roared to life, and Park felt the familiar vibration under his feet as they accelerated toward the distant star system. In the medical bay, Dr. Lee and her team started preparing for the biggest medical emergency they had ever faced. What the desperate Valerians didn't know was something very important about human hospital ships. Unlike other alien races who built separate medical vessels and warships, humans had learned hard lessons during their own wars. Their hospital ships were designed to work in dangerous war zones, not peaceful space. The UES Healer's Sword looked like a medical vessel, but it was armed and armored like a battleship. This difference would soon become very important. The Valerian delegation stood nervously at the spaceport landing pad, their blue skin shimmering in the afternoon sun of Kepler-4 Fortibee. Colony Administrator Velthor kept checking his watch, hoping the medical ship would arrive soon. Around him, other colony officials shifted anxiously, all thinking about the thousands of sick people in the medical centers behind them. There, in the sky, pointed Dr. Kaksala, the colony's head physician. "Something's coming through the clouds." Everyone looked up, expecting to see a clean white medical vessel with red crosses painted on its hull. That's what medical ships looked like in their part of the Galaxful, sterile, and clearly marked as non-threatening. Instead, what broke through the atmosphere made them all step backward in shock. The UES Healer's Sword was massive, over 1 kilometer long and dark gray like a storm cloud. Its hull was covered with what looked like weapon systems, sensor arrays, and defensive shields. Large gun turrets rotated slowly as the ship descended, and strange antenna-like devices extended from its sides. "By the ancestors," whispered Velthor, his translator device crackling with static from his nervous voice. "This appears to be a military vessel, not medical aid." The other Valerians began murmuring among themselves, their voices filled with worry. They had called for doctors and healers, but what was landing in front of them looked more like a warship than a hospital. The massive ship touched down with surprising gentleness for something so large. Steam hissed from its landing systems, and bright lights illuminated the area around the landing pad. A large ramp began lowering from the ship's belly, and the Valerians could see figures moving inside. Commander Park Jihan was the first to walk down the ramp, but he didn't look like any doctor the Valerians had ever seen. He wore a military uniform with medical insignia, and his confident stride was that of a soldier, not a typical healer. Behind him came several other humans, all wearing similar uniforms and carrying what looked like military equipment. "Commander Park Jihan, Korean Space Navy Medical Corps," he announced, stopping in front of the nervous alien delegation. "We received your distress call. We're here to help your people." Dr. Choi Huna emerged from the ship behind him, leading a team of medical personnel. But even she looked different from what the Valerians expected. Her medical equipment was housed in tough, military-style cases, and her team moved with the disciplined precision of soldiers rather than the gentle manner of typical doctors. The Valerians exchanged worried glances. These humans carried medical scanners that looked like weapons, wore armor under their medical coats, and had a commanding presence that made them seem more like an invasion force than a rescue mission. Commander Velthor said carefully, "We appreciate your response to our call for help. But we must ask, why does your medical ship appear to be armed?" Park looked at the alien administrator with understanding in his eyes. He had seen this reaction before, when humans first encountered other species. "Administrator Velthor, human medical ships are designed to operate in dangerous situations. We've learned that sometimes the sick and injured need protection as much as they need treatment." Dr. Choi stepped forward, her medical scanner already activated and reading the atmospheric conditions. "We're ready to begin treating your people immediately. Our equipment may look different, but I assure you, we're here to heal, not harm." The Valerians didn't know what to think. These humans had brought medicine, but it came wrapped in steel and carried by warriors. 2 hours into treating the sick colonists, sensor specialist Yoon Tae-yoon was monitoring the ship's long-range detection systems. When his screen suddenly exploded with activity, red dots appeared at the edge of sensor range, moving fast toward their position. He counted them quickly. 1, 5, 10, 20 ships. His heart started beating faster. "Commander Park, please come to the sensor station immediately," Yoon called out, his voice tight with concern. "We have a big problem." Park was in the medical bay watching Dr. Lee Mingi work on samples from the sick Valerians. When he heard the urgency in Yoon's voice, he quickly made his way to the bridge. The sensor screen showed a formation of ships approaching their system, and they were moving with clear military precision. "What am I looking at?" Park asked, though he already suspected the answer. Yoon pointed to the screen where the red contacts were getting closer. "Massive fleet approaching from the direction of the Zephyrian Empire. I count at least 30 warships, maybe more. They'll be here in about 6 hours." Park felt a cold chill run down his spine. The Zephyrian Empire was known throughout this part of the galaxy as aggressive and ruthless. They conquered weak planets and enslaved their populations. But why were they coming here now, at that moment? Dr. Lee Minji came running onto the bridge, her face pale and her hands shaking. She was carrying a tablet with her analysis results, and the expression on her face told Park everything he needed to know. "Commander," she said, breathing hard from running, "I finished studying the plague samples. This isn't a natural disease at all. Someone made this sickness on purpose." Park grabbed the tablet and looked at the data, though most of the scientific details were beyond his understanding. "What do you mean, made it?" "Pathogen was engineered in a laboratory, Doctor," Lee explained. "It's designed to spread quickly and overwhelm medical systems. This is a biological weapon, sir. Someone attacked this colony with a disease meant to kill." The pieces of the puzzle suddenly came together in Park's mind. The Zephyrians were known to use biological weapons to weaken their targets before invasion. They would release a plague, wait for the population to become sick and helpless, then arrive with their fleet to take over. Administrator Velthor and the other Valerian officials were listening to this conversation, and their blue faces went even paler. Velthor's translator device was shaking in his hands as he spoke. "Commander Park, our people have never fought a war. We are miners and scientists, not soldiers. We have no weapons, no shields, no way to defend ourselves against a military attack. Park looked around the bridge at his crew, then back at the approaching enemy fleet on the sensor screen. The Valerians had called for medical help, not knowing they were about to be invaded. By pure chance, they had received exactly what they needed: warriors who could fight while they healed. Dr. Lee Park said, his voice becoming firm and commanding, "How long do you need to create a cure for this engineered plague?" At her tablet again, calculating quickly. "If I work non-stop with my full team, at least 4 hours, maybe 5. Park studied the sensor readings one more time. The enemy fleet was still 6 hours away, but he knew they might arrive faster if they pushed their engines hard. "Then we hold the line for 4 hours. The Valerians looked at each other with a mixture of hope and fear. They had asked for doctors and received warriors just as their true enemies approached. The space around Claire 4-4 to be suddenly filled with flashing lights as 30 Zephyrian warships dropped out of hyperspace. Their dark holes gleamed menacingly in the system's sunlight. Their weapon systems were already charging for what their commander expected to be an easy victory. Fleet Commander Zakthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical display with satisfaction. The biological weapon had worked perfectly. The Valerian colony was helpless and dying. All that remained was to finish off any survivors and claim the planet's valuable crystal mines. But something was wrong. His sensors showed an unknown vessel positioned directly between his fleet and the planet. It was large and clearly not Valerian in design. Zachthal's tactical officer reported that the ship's weapons were powered and its shields were raised. "Ow! Is that ship?" Zachthal demanded, his reptilian features twisting with annoyance. "I thought you said this system was defenseless." His intelligence officer checked the readings again. "Sir, it appears to be some kind of medical vessel, but the energy signatures are ... unusual." On the human ship, Commander Park Jihan stood calmly on his bridge, watching the enemy fleet spread into attack formation. His crew was at battle stations, but they moved with the quiet confidence of professionals who knew their job. Dr. Lee Minji was still working frantically in the medical bay below, racing against time to complete the cure. The communication system crackled to life with an alien voice speaking in harsh, commanding tones. "This is Fleet Commander Zakthal of the Zephyrian Empire. You are interfering with our military operation. Withdraw your medical vessel immediately, or be destroyed." Park looked at his communications officer, Kim Suman, who nodded at the channel. Was open. He spoke in a calm, steady voice that carried the authority of someone who had faced danger many times before. "This is Commander Park Jihan of the Korean Space Navy Medical Corps. We are providing medical aid to 6 civilians on the planet below. Any hostile action against this vessel or the colony will be met with appropriate force." On the Zephyrian flagship, Zakthal laughed coldly. "Medical corps. You're doctors, not warriors. Stand down immediately, or we will remove you." Lieutenant Jung Min Ho, the tactical officer aboard the human ship, was monitoring the enemy fleet's movements. A grim smile crossed his face as he watched. The Zephyrians positioned themselves for what they thought would be an easy fight. "Sir," he said to Park, "they don't understand what they're dealing with. They think we're just doctors with no fighting ability." Park nodded, remembering his training and the lessons learned from human history. Earth had learned long ago that medical personnel needed to be protected in war zones. Though over time, this had evolved into something unique: medical ships that could fight as well as heal. "They're about to learn something important," Park replied, his voice carrying a note of steel. "Human medics don't abandon their patients, no matter what threatens them." Right. The Zephyrian fleet began moving closer, their weapons charging and targeting. Systems locking onto the human vessel. They expected the medical ship to retreat or surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Instead, the U.S. healer's sword held its position, its own weapons coming online with a low hum that could be felt. Throughout the ship, the human crew remained calm and focused. Each person knowing their role in the coming battle. Dr. Choi Huna's voice came over the intercom from the medical bay commander. "We have wounded colonists in our care, We cannot abandon them. Park's response was firm and final. We won't abandon anyone. All hands prepare for combat. We protect our patients. The first wave of Zephyrian fighter ships screamed through space toward the colony, their pilots confident this would be an easy victory. They had destroyed countless medical vessels before, slow, defenseless ships that could only run or surrender. But as they approached the U.S. healer's sword, something unexpected happened. Small objects began launching from the human ship, moving with incredible speed and precision. The Zephyrian pilots initially thought these were escape pods or medical supply containers. They were wrong. These were medical drones that had been quickly reprogrammed for combat. "What are those things?" shouted one Zephyrian pilot as the small drones swarmed around his fighter. Before he could react, bright beams of energy struck his ship from multiple directions, disabling his engines and weapons. On the human ship, Dr. Choi Huna was doing something no Zephyrian had ever seen before. She was running between wounded Valerian colonists in the medical bay while simultaneously coordinating the ship's defenses. Her medical tablet showed patient vital signs on one screen and enemy attack patterns on another. "Commander," she called out over the intercom while injecting medicine into a sick colonist. "I'm analyzing the enemy's biological weapons in real time. I can create countermeasures and upload them to our defensive systems." Her team of medical personnel worked with incredible efficiency, treating patients with one hand while operating defensive systems with the other. Surgical drones that had been performing operations minutes earlier were now intercepting enemy missiles and disabling fighter craft. The ship's surgical lasers, normally used for precise medical procedures, had been redirected to serve as point defense. Weapons. These systems could target and destroy incoming projectiles with the same accuracy they used to remove diseased tissue from patients. Weapons Officer Songguan watched his targeting screens with the focused concentration of a surgeon performing a delicate operation. Each shot he fired was calculated not just to destroy the enemy, but to minimize any risk to the colony below, or to nearby medical evacuation ships. "Target the fighter's engines only," he commanded his gunners. "Disable. Don't destroy unless necessary. We're not here to commit genocide." The Zephyrian pilots had never faced an enemy like this. The human ship fought with mathematical precision, each defensive move carefully planned to protect life while neutralizing threats. When fighters were disabled, the humans immediately transmitted surrender terms and offered medical aid to injured pilots. Commander Zakthal watched from his flagship in growing confusion and anger. His fighters were being systematically disabled by what was supposed to be a defenseless medical vessel. The human ship seemed to anticipate every attack, countering each move with surgical precision. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his tactical officer, treating patients and fighting a battle at the same time. Meanwhile, Dr. Li Mingi continued working on the cure in her laboratory, even as the ship shook from enemy fire. The battle raging outside didn't slow her down. If anything, it made her work faster. Knowing that her patients and her crewmates were depending on her, the medical bay had become a command center, where healing and warfare merged into one coordinated effort. Nurses monitored patient health while also tracking enemy movements. Surgical equipment doubled as precision weapon systems. Medical scanners analyzed both disease patterns and enemy battle tactics. The Zephyrians found themselves facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that could heal and harm with equal expertise. Fighting with the disciplined efficiency of an operating room staff, saving lives under pressure. Dr. Velsena never worked in conditions like this before. The laboratory aboard the UES healer's sword shook every few minutes as weapons fire struck the ship's shields. But Dr. Li Minji continued working on the cure as if nothing was happening. The Valerian scientists watched in amazement as the human doctor switched between analyzing disease samples and coordinating defensive countermeasures. "Your people are remarkable," Velsana said, her blue hands carefully handling the test samples. "You fight while you heal. This is not what we expected." When we called for medical aid, Dr. Li looked up from her molecular synthesizer, sweat beading on her forehead from the intense concentration. Outside, they could hear the sounds of battle energy weapons firing, defensive systems activating, crew members shouting orders. But inside the lab, she remained focused on her work. On Earth, Mingy explained while adjusting the synthesis parameters, we learned some hard lessons during our wars. Sometimes you must fight disease, invasion, and evil with equal determination. You can't heal people if you can't protect them first. Velsana had lived her entire life in a peaceful society where conflict was solved through discussion and compromise. The Valerians had never needed to fight because they had never encountered anyone who wanted to hurt them. But now, watching the humans work, she began to understand something important. Perhaps our pacifism has made us incomplete, she admitted. Quietly, we know how to heal, but we never learned how to protect what we heal. The collaboration between them was producing results faster than either could have achieved alone. Velsana's deep knowledge of Valerian biology combined with Dr. Lee's experience in combat. Medicine created something powerful. They weren't just making a cure, they were developing a weapon against the Zephyrian biological agents. Look at this, Dr. Lee said, pointing to her screen. If we modify the antidote slightly, it doesn't just cure the disease. It makes the patient immune to all similar bioweapons. The Zephyrians won't be able to use this tactic again. Velsana's eyes widened as she understood the implications. And if we put this into an aerosol form, we can deploy it as a defensive measure. Dr. Lee finished. Anyone who breathes it becomes immune to Zephyrian biological weapons. It's like a vaccine, but delivered through the air. Working together, they began producing large quantities of the modified cure. The human ship's medical manufacturing systems, designed for battlefield conditions, could produce medicine quickly and efficiently. Soon, they had enough to treat not just the sick colonists, but to protect the entire population. Dr. Velsana watched as medical drones carried the cure to treatment centers throughout the colony. At the same time, other drones were preparing to deploy the aerosol version as a protective measure against future attacks. I understand now, she said too. Dr. Lee, true healing isn't just about treating sickness. It's about preventing it from happening again. Dr. Lee smiled as she watched the treatment progress on her monitors. That's what we call preventive medicine. But sometimes preventing disease means fighting the people who would use it as a weapon. The battle outside continued, but now the humans had something new to fight with, a cure that could protect entire populations from biological warfare. The best way to preserve peace was to be prepared for war. The space around Kepler 4b suddenly filled with new flashes of light as 3 more massive ships dropped out of hyperspace. Commander Zachthel's tactical officer immediately began scanning the new arrivals, hoping they were Zephyrian reinforcements coming to help finish the battle. Sir, the tactical officer reported with growing concern, the new ships are human. Medical vessels, just like the first one, but they're huge. Zachthal stared at his screen in disbelief. The U.S. Mercy's Edge and U.S. Gentle Thunder were even larger than the first human ship. And a third vessel, the U.S. Healing Storm, moved with the same deadly grace. Each ship bristled with the same combination of medical equipment and weapons. Systems that had been giving his fleet so much trouble. On the bridge of the UES Healer's Sword, Commander Park felt a surge of relief as he watched his reinforcements take position. The 3 medical ships moved with practiced precision, forming a defensive triangle around the planet. Their timing was perfect. His own ship's shields were getting low, and his crew was tired from hours of continuous battle. This is Commander. Park to all vessels, he announced over the fleet communication system. Form up for coordinated defense. We have civilians on the planet who need protection. The response came immediately from the other ships. U.S. Mercy's Edge, ready for action. U.S. Gentle Thunder, standing by. U.S. Healing Storm, all systems. Green Park studied the tactical display, analyzing the positions of both friendly and enemy ships. The Zephyrian fleet was spread out in an attack formation designed to overwhelm a single target, but now they faced 4 equally powerful opponents. All ships, Park commanded, concentrate fire on enemy bioweapon deployment vessels. I want. Surgical strikes only minimize collateral damage. We're here to protect life, not destroy it. The 4 human medical ships began moving in perfect coordination, like surgeons working together on a complex operation. Each ship had a specific role to play, and their crews had trained for exactly this type of situation.
It was Zephyrian's head.
Never seen anything like it, Commander Zakthal watched in growing frustration as his carefully planned attack formation began to fall apart. His ships were designed to fight weak opponents who would panic and make mistakes. Instead, the humans fought with the same calm efficiency they probably used in their medical procedures. "They're targeting our biological weapon systems specifically," his weapons officer reported. "They know exactly where to hit us to disable our most effective weapons." The human ships moved like skilled doctors performing surgery, each action precise and purposeful. When they fired their weapons, it was with the same accuracy they used to remove diseased tissue, targeting exactly what needed to be eliminated. While preserving everything else, the UES Mercy's Edge disabled 3 Zephyrian fighters with shots that knocked out their engines without destroying the ships. The UES Gentle Thunder systematically targeted the enemy's biological weapon storage facilities, neutralizing the threat without harming the crews. The UES Healing Storm provided cover for medical evacuation ships that were rescuing wounded pilots. From both sides, the tide of battle had completely turned. Zephyrian fleet, designed for overwhelming weak opponents, found themselves outmaneuvered by enemies who fought with the methodical efficiency of emergency room surgeons working to save lives under pressure. Every human action was precise, purposeful, and devastatingly effective. They weren't just winning the battle, they were demonstrating a completely different way of fighting, one that preserved life even while defending against those who would destroy it. The Zephyrian fleet was in ruins. More than half their ships were disabled, floating powerlessly in space with their engines destroyed and weapons systems offline. The remaining vessels were badly damaged, their crews struggling to keep basic life support systems running. Commander Zakthal stood on his burning flagship, watching smoke fill the bridge while emergency lights flashed all around him. His tactical officer, injured and bleeding from a head wound, looked up from his damaged console. "Sir, we've lost contact with most of our fleet. Ships that are still functioning are requesting orders." Zakthal stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what had happened. His powerful war fleet had been systematically dismantled by medical ships. It seemed impossible. But the evidence was floating all around him in space, the twisted wreckage of his once mighty vessels. Suddenly, all the communication systems in the Zephyrian fleet crackled to life with the same transmission. "Commander," Park's voice was calm and steady, but it carried the authority of someone who had just won a decisive victory. "This is Commander Park Ji-han of the Korean Space Navy Medical Corps," the human voice said. "Your fleet has been defeated. We offer immediate medical aid to all wounded personnel who surrender unconditionally. Those who continue hostile actions will be destroyed." The message was broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every surviving Zephyrian ship. In the damaged vessels, wounded crew members looked at each other in confusion. Medical aid from the enemy who had just defeated them? Zakthal's communications officer, struggling with damaged equipment, managed to establish a connection. "Commander, this is highly irregular. Every battle we fought, the victors either destroyed the survivors or took them as slaves. Offering to heal our wounded?" The concept was completely alien to Zephyrian thinking. In their culture, defeat meant death or slavery. The idea that an enemy would offer medical help to those who had just tried to kill them was beyond their understanding. On the human flagship, Dr. Choi Hyuna was already preparing medical teams to treat wounded Zephyrians. Her staff worked quickly, setting up treatment areas and gathering supplies. To them, this was normal procedure. You fought to protect your patients. And when the fighting was over, you treated anyone who needed help. "Commander Park," she reported, "we're ready to receive wounded from both sides. Our medical bays can handle about 200 casualties." Park nodded, then spoke into his communication system again. "Zephyrian vessels, you have 5 minutes to respond. Medical teams are standing by to help your wounded, but you must surrender completely." Fleet Commander Zakthal felt something he had never experienced before: a complete confusion about an enemy's motives. His flagship was dying around him, his crew was injured, and his fleet was destroyed. But instead of finishing them off, these human warriors were offering to save their lives. You, ... He said slowly into his communicator, "You are warrior healers." Commander Park's response came immediately, and there was something almost gentle in his voice. "We are what we need to be, Commander. We fight to protect the innocent, and we heal anyone who needs it. Surrender now, and you and your crew will live to see tomorrow." The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Then, one by one, the surviving Zephyrian ships began transmitting surrender signals. Their crews, wounded and defeated, chose life. Over a meaningless death, 3 months had passed since the battle at Kepler 4, for to be, the mining colony looked completely different. Where once there had been only mining equipment and basic shelters, now there were modern medical facilities, defensive platforms, and training centers. The Valerian colonists moved with a new sense of confidence. Knowing they were no longer helpless against future threats, Dr. Velsana stood in the main plaza of the rebuilt colony, wearing something that would have been unthinkable just months ago, the uniform of a joint human-Valerian medical corps. The insignia on her chest showed both species symbols combined, representing a new kind of cooperation between their peoples. Commander Park walked beside her, watching as the first graduating class of Valerian combat medics performed their final training exercises. These alien students were learning to do what had once seemed impossible: to heal and protect at the same time. They carried medical scanners in one hand and defensive weapons in the other, ready to save lives in dangerous situations. "Look at them," Velsana said, with pride in her voice. "6 months ago, my people believed that violence was always wrong, that healing and fighting could never go together. We understand now that true healing requires the strength to fight for what is right." One of the Valerian students was practicing emergency surgery while simulated enemy fire created distractions around her. She remained focused on her patient, but she also kept track of the tactical situation, ready to defend her medical station if necessary. It was exactly the kind of skill that had saved the colony during the Zephyrian attack. Park nodded as he watched the training exercise. The strongest medicine is often the hardest to swallow, but it works. In the distance, the UES healer's sword could be seen patrolling the edge of the star system, its sensors constantly scanning for threats. It was no longer alone to Valerian vessels, newly equipped with both medical facilities and defensive systems, flew alongside it. The partnership between the two species had created something stronger than either could achieve alone. The signing ceremony for the formal alliance had taken place in the colony's new medical center, with representatives from both the Korean Space Navy and the Valerian Coalition. The document they signed wasn't just a military treaty. It was a promise to share knowledge, protect each other's people, and spread their combined philosophy of militant compassion throughout the galaxy. Dr. Lee Minji, now serving as the director of the Joint Medical Research Facility, developed new treatments that combined human battlefield medicine with Valerian biological science. Her laboratory was producing medicines that could heal wounds faster and protect against biological weapons more effectively than anything either species had created before. The word had spread throughout this sector of space about what had happened at Kepler 4 to be. Other peaceful civilizations were reaching out to the human-Valerian alliance, asking for protection and medical aid. The hospital ships of the Korean Space Navy had become symbols throughout the region, beacons of hope that promised both healing and the strength to defend it. Young Valerians who had never considered military service were now volunteering for the Combat Medical Corps. They wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves, to carry the message that true healers don't abandon their patients, no matter what threatens them. The Alliance had created a new way of thinking about medicine and warfare, one that other species were beginning to adopt. The galaxy was becoming a safer place, one protected medical facility at a time.